Today we want to talk about teams who got better, who got worse, and I want to start it off with this. What situations are the worst in the NBA currently? I think Phoenix has got to be up there in the top 5. We can start in the West if we want. Who's got it worse than the Phoenix Suns in the West? That's a good question.
Nobody.
Because Utah, at least you could go, well, they're going to be bad, and that's okay.
Sacramento's up there, but it's
Sac-Town's,
Phoenix.
It's Phoenix.
If you want to look at
New Orleans, not great right now.
But
no,
they have good players that they can at least trade or try to build around. Like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones are both very, very good.
And Zion still has some value.
And maybe Zion. Maybe Zion will play games this year.
But Jordan Poole.
If you want to talk about the bottom of the West and probably the worst tier of what's the plan, it's going to be the Sacramento Kings, the Phoenix Suns, the New Orleans Pelicans, and of course the Utah Jazz. We could start from the Jazz and work our way up. They have Lauri Markkanen. He's still there, but that's the ultimate will they, won't they with trading him. Who knows what the price actually is there. They added Yusuf Nurkic. And, I mean, Austin Ainge, who's the son of Danny Ainge, is the president of basketball operations.
Danny is there, too.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's the Ainge show over there.
They said they're not going to tank this year, but what are they really rolling out there?
Exactly.
Utah got rid of John Collins, who was a person that was in every trade rumor for Atlanta for a long time, has now finally been dished twice. They got rid of John Collins. They got rid of Jordan Clarkson. They got rid of Colin Sexton this summer. For a minimal return, they drafted the 18-year-old Project Ace, but no longer going to play in Summer League and is projected to play the youngest backcourt in the league. The Jazz could try not to tank and still lose 60-plus games this season, given their own deficiencies and the broad strength across the rest of the West. Now, the thing about the Jazz is, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, they got off to an incredibly hot start. Everyone thought the Jazz were going to be terrible, and they were somehow sitting at like a 4 seed in the Western Conference for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And then managed to get towards the bottom. But this is a team that's tried to bottom out for a long time and can't really do anything about it.
Well, they keep not winning the lottery. They had the worst record in the league last year, and they picked 5th. That's how the lottery broke down.
That's how the lottery works,
yeah.
And that's if you're the worst team, and we saw that happen last year with the Pistons are the worst record. They got the 5th overall pick.
Yeah, since they changed the lottery odds to kind of even things out to prevent such egregious tanking as to, the worst team had significantly better odds. That's just not true anymore. It's kind of flattened out. I believe the top 3 teams all have the same odds. I think it's 14 or so percent. And we saw it this year. A lot of teams jumped way up. Philly, Dallas, and San Antonio should not have been picking as high as they did.
No,
and it to the detriment of all the teams behind them, the Wizards of the world, the Jazz, the Bulls. Good Lord, I mean, there's a lot of bad teams that didn't get good picks.
1.5% chance, I believe it was, around that range for Dallas to get the number 1 overall pick after they dish away Luka Doncic. Let's not forget that happened in February, dishing away a phenom, a superstar. And now they get what they think will be, and I think a lot of us in this room will be a possible superstar.
Pretty good star.
Yeah, gets to work and learn around guys like Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Kyrie when he's back and healthy.
The thing is that
your guy deloading.
Yeah, I love D'Angelo Russell. I mean, the best thing that guy ever did was ruin a relationship in the NBA.
Yes. Would that be Iggy Azalea and
Nick Young, the greatest meme of all time?
Yes.
The Cooper Flag's going into a team with a lot of former champions, and I think that is something that is very important to his development. Speaking of teams that don't have anything going in terms of development, the New Orleans Pelicans. One would suspect the Pelicans would place themselves in a different tier given their aggression with which they approach their offseason moves, most notably trading away an unprotected 2026 first-round pick to move up 10 spots in the 2025 draft. With that trade with the Atlanta Hawks, the GM of the Atlanta Hawks reportedly multiple times asked, it's unprotected, to make sure that they didn't knew what they were talking about. And for whatever reason, the Pelicans did it. And there's some reason for hope. Mainly, the Pelicans can enjoy better health from Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy III, and Herb Jones, combined for just 103 games last year. Your best 3 players are barely getting you over a combined total of what the NBA season is. They got rid of C.J. McCollum, they got rid of Brandon Ingram, and they also have nothing they can really do with Dejounte Murray next season. There is also a lot in flux in New Orleans with no clear long-term plan to build a winning roster. even in the short term, it's not as if the Pelicans were world beaters in the rare moments of health last season, as they finished 10-20 when Williamson played with a minus 4.3 net rating. Kind of the boat has sailed on Zion Williamson. I think just the inability to stay on the court, it has cost him his superstar status. I think the amount of he's gotten kind of softer. It's very. You're not seeing the.
You can't. You're not going to rely on that guy to be on the court, right? When he plays, he's good. It's just when he plays is the key term there.
Was playing so hard his shoes would explode in college is gone. And this team had an identity for all of half of a postseason for a second. It was defensive when they were absolutely mollywopping. They didn't beat Phoenix, right? They just pushed them to 7. And then Phoenix goes on to lose a Western Conference final to the Warriors that year. Am I correct?
Is this the Boogie Cousins and AD era?
No. This is going to be the year the Phoenix Suns lose to
the Bucks.
The Bucks
in the finals.
And then the Phoenix. What was the year Chris Paul Phoenix Suns? They lose to Luka. Luka loses to the Warriors. I want to say
22.
Okay, so that's the year that the Pelicans weren't supposed to really make the playoffs, and then they took that top seeded Suns to 7 games.
I have no memory of that series.
I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I believe it.
That was the birth of Grand Theft.
Alvarado.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't like him. He's annoying.
That's a player they don't mention. But speaking of which, the Phoenix Suns, what's the plan? Has been a fair question for the Phoenix Suns for a while now, and this offseason hasn't offered any meaningful clarification. The Suns didn't get great return when trading Durant, while simultaneously adding 2 centers on draft night and still lacking any natural point guards or power forwards in their projected rotation. Devin Booker and Jalen Green could make for a very awkward fit as a starting backcourt. Expect the Suns, led by owner Matt Ishbia, to keep sacrificing the future to try to compete in the present, but don't expect any actual wins. The thing I would like to give a little credit to the Phoenix Suns. Their draft pick, first off, was the center who could be a world beater. Can you help me with the name here, Jack?
Come on, Malawach out of Duke.
Malawach. I think that he offers some play with Devin Booker that could be very exciting. Now, the thing is, when you look at a Jalen Green, if Jalen Green's willing to kind of not necessarily take a step back, but shift his focus into being a defensive-minded player first and offensive second, if he used his athleticism and explosiveness, that was what got him drafted in the lottery all those years ago now, I think he could be a phenomenal player. His defensive rating against that Golden State Warriors team in the playoffs this year was fantastic. It's just a fact that he's not a guy to get you a bucket, and that's what they were trying to make him in Houston for the longest while. And then it was like, well, do we really need another defensive piece with the Terror Twins, XYZ, all the other pieces they have? So I do believe that there's a world where he works well with Devin Booker, but it's not as a, primary scoring option.
Yeah, he's going to have to turn into an off-ball player if he wants to. Because, on-ball, just lead guard, shooting guard, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Devin Booker, that mold. That's just he's not shown that he's good enough to do that in the NBA at an NBA level. No. He did lead the Rockets in scoring last year, but the efficiency numbers are terrible.
Yeah, disastrous.
He's not a great finisher around the basket. Doesn't make great decisions. It feels like he's kind of trying to figure it out on the fly. He's not reactive. But yeah, it's a disaster in Phoenix. I think they have done just about as well as they could have this offseason with some of the two-way guys that they signed, the Fleming out of St. Joe's that they got early in the second round. Like, there's a few good moves in here. Malawach, I like Mark Williams in theory, but this team
is rudderless.
To compete in this Western Conference, there's no shot.
Yeah.
They don't have the picks to rebuild.
They're a boat without sails, and if you're looking about trying to figure out what they would do with their future, they have no rudder as well. And lastly, the Sacramento Kings in 1,121 possessions with Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, and Zach LaVine sharing the floor last season. The Kings had an offensive rating of 117.4. Sounds pretty good. That is a solid mark, ranking 72nd percentile of all lineups league-wide. But in those same possessions, the Kings had a 120.9 defensive rating, which ranked in the 11th percentile. The Kings have stars, and they have they're often entertaining. but they didn't have a realistic path consistently winning games. Maybe they compete for a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference, but they're not good enough in the West. This was a light-the-beam team from about 2 years ago who had seemingly a bright future, but injuries have derailed that and poor management. And once again, they have found themselves in the basement of all the California teams.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox is in San Antonio now. Yeah. In 72nd percentile for that lineup, if you have DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Domantas Sabonis on the floor, you need to just be outscoring the hell out of your opponents.
You're rolling the old Bulls out, essentially.
In the 72nd percentile is merely pretty good because you're just going to get trashed on the defensive end. DeMar DeRozan is 35 years old. Zach LaVine has never been in a context where his high-volume scoring has led to anything.
Yeah.
The Bulls were okay when him and DeRozan were there for a stretch, but and then Domantas Sabonis, I think we've seen his best, and it was that 2023 season with De'Aaron Fox. And now after the Tyrese Halliburton trade, basically for Domantas Sabonis, there was more in there, but those were the cornerstones of that trade.
And it's no disrespect to him; he's still a good basketball player, but that trade obviously looks kind of
it has aged
horrible,
poorly. And
bad.
I think
now that you don't have De'Aaron Fox on that team, right?
That
was a part of it.
You were like, well, why are you drafting Halliburton? His fit next to Fox is weird. They're both point guards,
right?
And then
one's lengthier and the other's fast.
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton be very, very good as a young player,
right?
And then you move off of him for a better fit in the short term. But then we saw what Tyrese Halliburton did
in these playoffs last 2
years.
Yeah, you coin flipped and you absolutely lost the coin flip. So Noah, I ask you, of the Sacramento Kings, of the Phoenix Suns, of the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Utah Jazz, the what are we doing tier of the NBA in the West, that is, which organization would you least like any stake of the future, and which one would you actually take a bit of stake in?
I don't want to deal with what's going on in Phoenix whatsoever, but I would say of all, yes, they have some pieces you can kind of move around, but it's got to be New Orleans. I think that's grim there.
The worst situation you're saying?
Yeah. You look at Sacramento. This has been Sacramento for decades. It's kind of what their franchise is. It's just, it's a a lot of just
mob
whatever.
Ties. That's what did
mob
them in.
ties. I think what's happening in the city of New Orleans right now. Right, Patrick Queen. What's the kid's name? Derek Queen. Thank you, from Maryland. He could be a good pick, but what you did with that draft pick being not protected, you're going to be a bad team, and it's a pick swap. Looks like Milwaukee will be better, but Giannis is staying. We'll figure that out for sure as time goes on. They lose, they get Miles Turner as well, but I don't think where New Orleans or Phoenix is good. Utah at least is just building from the ground up. You go and take a shot on a guy like Ace Bailey, who's now playing for your team. Ainge said, nah, it's all good. We're going to take you whether you want to be in Salt Lake City or not. And that could pan out. And I like the fact that they have Walter Clayton from Florida. He could be something there. The guy's a gamer. Yes, he's a little undersized for the NBA, but I think 6'3" and up, you're pretty good. And when you get comparisons to Steph Curry, that's how tall and how big he is. So, again, high hopes for him. Whatever. Sacramento could be next in that list. I think of all of them, Utah, because they're doing it the right way, right? They actually...
But it's not paying off, it seems.
For the time being. I just don't think they're contract issues. They don't have as much going on, as many ties as guys like Bradley Beal, who you're going to have to buy out in Phoenix, and God knows what they're doing with Jordan Poole. I just don't think there's a lot of hope. What's New Orleans' best outcome? They're the 10 seed? You know what I mean? Okay, great. You know what I mean? Still your pick's gone next year, so I don't know. I'll ask you this. We'll do this throughout the day too. I'm gonna say just a random team who we think is improved. We'll get off some of the crappier teams. I'll shoot out a name or two as the hours go on, and you tell me what their potential is, their max potential. Whether it's the Rockets, Oklahoma City, who we think could probably win it all, or teams like Minnesota. We'll start off there. Where the Minnesota Timberwolves top out? Is it the same thing they've done the last 2 years, where it's been the Western Conference Finals? They haven't done too much in the offseason. We know that. But maybe that's a place we've seen Damian Lillard. Obviously, it's going to be later on we'll see if he plays in 2026. But what is Minnesota Timberwolves? Can they win the West? Can they win it all?
They're in my second tier here of ready to deny a repeat champion. They potentially have the pieces. They played against them. They got wins, a couple. They also lost pretty significantly a handful of times to the clear-cut favorite. But I think you need Ant to really break through this glass ceiling.
Got to be more consistent.
And become a league carrying superstar.
I think they need one more piece too. I think Kevin Durant would have made sense there. He obviously didn't want to be there. He ends up in a place like Houston, whether that's about financial compensation, whether it's about the nucleus around him, whether it's about whatever it might be. He's got people he's tied to. Royal Ivy. He wanted to be in the state of Texas, and when I say that, maybe just didn't want to be up in the cold with Minnesota. And he wanted to be the guy, which Ant is the guy up there, and you mentioned that. So I wonder what Minnesota can be, because they're kind of almost in that tier of breaking through. They've been in the Western Conference Finals for 2 years in a row and lost. Jack, what do you think with Minnesota? Could they take a leap, or do they need another player or piece to kind of move into that competing for a championship? Seriously.
I think they're pretty clearly the fourth best team in the West.
That being Oklahoma City, you'd probably go Houston or Denver at 2 and 3?
Correct.
Yeah.
Lakers, I mean, odds perspective, they would be next, and then Minnesota.
That's just the name.
But that's
dude.
the Laker
That
name.
is literally the name.
It's probably the Laker name,
don't
because I don't think what they did this offseason is enough.
That's the old guard.
I don't like what Minnesota has at guard right now. I mean, they have Anthony Edwards, and then it's like
okay,
Mike
Conley,
Conley?
probably last year, the guy.
Rob Dillingham.
Dillingham.
Nothing yet.
Yeah. I mean, Minnesota still I think they're a piece away, and that's why I put Kevin Durant is one of those guys, but Kevin Durant is now a Houston Rocket. On the east side of things, where does Philly, a healthy Philly, and that's the issue, where does Philadelphia land in this mix? What is their potential? Let's say Embiid plays 60 games, which would be insane for him.
Well, they could win the East.
They could win the East.
Yeah. I mean, if Joel Embiid can...
No, it's
and they have probably the most interesting future in the league.
yeah. I think they vary the most, right?
Yeah,
We could have another lottery team, or we could have a Eastern Conference champion.
And
You're
remember
right.
how we talked about Golden State a few years ago when Steph had like the hand injury and Clay was coming back from the ACL, KD had left, of the merging the two timelines, and they had 2 top draft picks in one draft, and they had the second pick in another, and they just completely whiffed on all of them. It was Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and James Wiseman, and you could have drafted like LaMelo Ball at the very least.
Where's he now?
I don't think he's in the league.
Oof.
He was on your Pistons for a second.
Yeah, and then he's been gone.
Yeah, so... But Philly, it's like their first act did not go as well as Golden State's. Obviously, Golden State was a dynasty. But like those teams were okay, and now you have Tyrese Maxey, who fits with the current timeline. I mean, he's had great playoff moments for Philly 2 seasons ago and a season before that. But you also have Jared McCain.
It feels kind of like a similar version of what we just talked about with Sacramento. Mm-hmm. 2 guards. They're both kind of like 2s, though.
And VJ Edgecombe in there as well.
Who's like a 2-3 stretch, would you say?
But he's like very
really
small for a small forward. But, we've seen that work in the modern era of the NBA. I mean, look at OKC. They were able to play a lot of pretty short guys that were just super sturdy and can play good defense.
Hey, VJ Edgecombe, shout out to him, out of Baylor, right? The Bahamian, is that right?
Bahamian, I think.
Bahamian, thank you. He had how many points in Summer League? Was it like he dropped a crap ton, rocking 77? That kid's a high flyer. If you ever watched
Lowry
him.
came back.
Oh my, Kyle Lowry, good Lord. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they have just kind of shorter guards. Jared McCain was playing great until he got hurt.
But yeah,
Maxey's got his bag already. Will podcast P, Paul George, be anything for them?
I think the
Will
median
he even be there.
Yeah, I mean, like, when has the best case scenario ever happened for the Philadelphia 76ers? But the best case scenario is that Joel Embiid and Paul George aren't washed. I think Joel Embiid signing that contract extension when he did, like either right before or right after the Olympics, was kind of telling that Joel Embiid knows that he might not have it anymore. But I would guess that it ends up just being Philly opts for the younger timeline. Joel Embiid and Paul George don't play that much. Maybe Paul George gets traded, and they're going to be the 10 seed in the East because the East is that bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is bad.